Hello and welcome to the Redmen TV. I'm Chris Pajak. I'm joined by Errol and by Paul Amann of Kop Outs. Now, this is a really sort of interesting show and yet one that needs doing and highlighting, and we're going to cover some topics that we probably don't talk about, well, we don't talk about enough of on Redmen TV. And it's something that I think is obviously close to your heart, Paul, and something for maybe that people will consider it close to me. And actually, if I'm being brutally honest, I've not looked forward to this show in any way, because I've never sat down and spoken with you, Paul, and everybody knows there's a history with me and the terminology Rent Boys. And I remember you emailing us years ago when I came out with that video after the Chelsea defeat in 13-14. And, you know, I'm a big enough person to know that I should have got back in touch with you over the years and spoken to you, and I haven't, and that makes this conversation even harder, if I'm being frank. But Liverpool Football Club at the moment has done a lot about inclusivity within football, and I think, you know, that's obviously a great thing from the football club. Obviously, you got to sit down with Jurgen Klopp a couple of weeks ago, and yet I'm sure, as you both say in the video, Paul, you'd both like to have met under different circumstances.
Absolutely, and same with yourself. You know, I mean, Redmen TV, part of the LFC fan base, part of the whole thing, especially in Liverpool. You watch Hughes, you listen to other podcasts.
You can say the name, it's fine.
And it is important that, you know, as with any group of people, any family or whatever, that we actually do acknowledge when you've upset each other, but equally you move on and you get on with the stuff that we're really into, which is the footy and whatever else.
Yeah, I think that's right, isn't it? I think it's safe to say, well, isn't it, that we've all been in situations where we felt uncomfortable. Yeah. And it's difficult in those situations, and it's hard when you are uncomfortable in a situation. And certainly I think when you grow up, I mean, I've made so many mistakes over the years, and thankfully not all of them have been on camera. Yes. But it's a difficult thing when you are in an uncomfortable situation regardless, especially when you want to do something like go to the footy, where you shouldn't be in an uncomfortable situation, should you?
No, 100%. And I think even just growing up as a black lad in the city, sometimes it's a similar spotlight that you can find yourself under. There have been occasions there where I know first-hand experiences of people just going about the business, and, you know, we'll be getting the bus into town or we'll be going out on night out and things have been said, and it does leave people feeling uncomfortable. It makes obviously the person who the either abuse or whatever's being said at feels very uncomfortable and probably hurt by it. But then equally you've got innocent people kind of that are spectators to it that have also left uncomfortable and not knowing exactly the right thing to say, the right thing to do. And it puts a lot of people in a very difficult situation. And I'd like to think it's definitely got better over the years. I think in terms of obviously how it's portrayed in certain things in the media, I'm talking obviously, you know, let's be honest, racism and homophobia, they're highlighted a lot more in this day and age than they probably was. I think that's probably down to the internet age as well in terms of social media. But then likewise, on the flip side, when it rears its ugly head because of social media as well, there's more of a focus and a lens on it as well, and I think that kind of amplifies the situation. Sometimes it takes it out of context, sometimes it doesn't give the full context, but it doesn't avoid where hurt or you know, harm has been done, and, you know, you can't kind of reverse that damage. I suppose once something's in the internet world, it circulates, it can kind of grow a life of its own, as you found in the past.
Yeah, I think that's right. And Paul, sort of moving it on slightly, I mean, your early days as a gay Liverpool fan, what was that like going to the football?
I'll take it back earlier. As somebody of black heritage, you know, my dad didn't want us going to the match when I was a kid.
Well, I was going to ask you that really, because, you know, I grew up with a single mum in that respect, and when I was like, you know, she's married now, but up until I was about 8, 9, she didn't have a partner in that sense. So as a Liverpool fan, as a young Liverpool fan, her thing was, I'm not gonna, as a woman, engross myself in you know, a very male-dominated atmosphere as a black woman with my son, because I can't protect you. Yeah. And I feel like that kind of what you're alluding to.
It's exactly that. When I was a kid in the 70s and early 80s, you'd had the NF at the match. It wasn't safe to be black at the match. Yeah. You know, it just, period. And
that's visible, isn't it? Because
that's a visible issue that, you know, I couldn't necessarily go with me brothers who were darker than me and my dad who's black, because it was just dangerous, and I wasn't going on my own or with just one or two of my siblings who were a bit lighter, because that just felt all kinds of weird anyway. And the whole being gay and going to the match, it actually felt enormously empowering to go to the match and enjoy football when I first went in the early 2000s, and European nights, and seeing some brilliant games, feeling the atmosphere of the Kop, that electricity, that whole buzz, and listening to You'll Never Walk Alone, and then taking part and joining chants, learning the songs, and becoming part of the fan base. And that was absolutely fantastic until the point of that chant, when I've described it before like a bucket of cold water, and it's literally like that in terms of the complete taking out of all the things you'd just grown to love about the camaraderie, and somehow suddenly I was part of the other. And the reason why those words are so damning and so bloody irritating to hear is because it's people having a laugh and a pop at gay sex. And the origins of it, there's a couple of origin stories. One is that it's about the fact that Chelsea, their ground was located in an area where a lot of male prostitutes who had sex with men, rent boys, frequented. And the other is an early 80s story that a Chelsea headhunter got caught in bed with a male prostitute. And the whole thing, since that time, has been about denigrating people who have sex with men. And my sex life is not a matter for people to hurl abuse about, and nobody should be, you know what I mean? And it's like, the impact of those words, when it's said as a slur, which it's absolutely being used as, it's not good to listen to. I mean, there's enough nonsense going off within the city for us to not have it at the footy. And we've got so many more fantastic songs and chants to, you know, to use to either encourage the team,
up the team's the whole point.
Or to, you know, if you need the occasional pop at the other team, we're more than inventive enough to do it in a way that can really get under the skin. I remember Arsenal, I think it was about 2014, we were beating them 4-0.
Yeah.
Can you remember the chant that we used?
No.
You're Tottenham in disguise.
Oh, well, there you go. You know, the one I always think of when I think about those is...
Could use that a lot now.
Did we beat Manchester United and we sang Happy Birthday to Sir Alex Ferguson? I mean, that's the type of thing, isn't it? Like,
sarcasm, yeah.
Proper humour, proper having a dig without going down to hate.
So I think we can all be sort of complicit in this at times, and for God's sakes, I know I've been complicit in this, but I think one of the things that I'd like to ask you, if you don't mind, Paul, is when you saw the video of me outside Chelsea, how did that make you feel?
I was furious. I was really angry that part of, you know, an influential part of the fan base was throwing that around. It made me angry. It made me really disappointed, because I'd seen Redmen TV as part of my allies, part of me, you know, support for being a supporter. You know, the conversations I'd previously had with yourselves about, you know, Kop Outs and the beginnings of the LGBT plus supporters group and stuff. And then that was thrown back in my face. So, yeah, I was really angry, really disappointed.
I think, you know, I've gone on record over the years, and I said to you yesterday when we were speaking ahead of this show that, you know, for me, it's literally the biggest regret of my entire life. And I can say that with hand on heart, that if there was one thing that I could do, or undo, I should say, in my life, that would be it above all else, because and this isn't me trying to garner support or understanding of my situation since, it's fucking embarrassment, to be quite honest with you, that it was me. Like, I see that and I don't see me. I see obviously a younger version of myself, but I don't see that encapsulates who I am. because, and I've mentioned this over the years, is that I've been defined. And what annoys me more than anything about this is that I feel like I'm the poster boy for this entire sort of group of people who do use those words still. And I don't want anything to do with it. Like, and I can't wipe it off the face of the earth. And, you know, it was a mistake and I was wrong and I'm sorry. It's happened though, and there's nothing that I can do now.
Well, there's loads you can do, and there's loads you are doing. And what any of us can do when we make a mistake is, one, own it, which you are doing, and two, move forward in a way that isn't about that. Move forward in a way that is about doing the positive stuff that you do. Move forward in a way that's about educating our fellow fans when it's needed, about encouraging the positivity, getting behind the team in a way that is really motivating for the team. You know, those lads, they want to hear their names being sung. You know, that's what the squad want. They want to be doing so well that we sing all of their names and do it in a way that lifts that team to lift more trophies. What we all want as Liverpool fans is to see more of that. And the positive stuff that Redmen TV do, the positive stuff that you, Chris, do, helps that. And keep on doing that. You know, yeah, you've apologised. I've accepted that. That's fantastic. And you're doing an awful lot of good in other ways that you need to focus on. Because, you know, we've all done crap. We've all done stuff we regret. Unfortunately, yours was live on camera or whatever. So, you know, you're going to have to live with it.
I am, and I know, I'm safe in the knowledge that at some point my children are going to see that, and what are they going to think of me, and hopefully I'll have done enough in their lives for them to not realise that that's me, or whatever. But, you know, I think about their friends, and their friends will probably see it when they're growing up and stuff like that, and as a father, it does change your perspective on things as well. You do sort of think about what's happened in the past, and certainly when you're on video, and, you know, even just putting pictures up on Facebook, which I don't do anymore of my children, because there are people out there who don't like me, and that's fine, and I understand that, and you can't please everybody all the time. But I think what you can do, Errol, is you can try and move forwards and be a better version of yourself, because quite honestly, I felt sick when Paul was saying what he felt like then, because there's no one set out to do that to someone, and if you do, then you're a really small minority.
Yeah, and it's interesting just listening to some of the points that you touched on there, because if I kind of not flip it, but if I was to be in your experience listening to a video similar said by yourself, but the connotations were, you know, quite clearly more racially motivated, you do feel as though Redmen is part of your extended family in terms of the Liverpool spectrum anyway, because of, you know, you'll watch the match, you'll probably watch some match of the day highlights, and then you'll definitely go on to see the, you know, the afterthoughts of you guys, and when you're sitting down in the studio and you're doing the final words, and then you're doing your build-ups. So all of that, you feel more like, you do feel as though you are part of the family, even though you're just watching it through a screen. Even before, you know, we had this working relationship, in so to speak, that was how I would have felt as well. So I can completely understand from your perspective how you've ended up feeling as hurt as you did at the time. I think what's really interesting in terms of the things that you touched on here for us is the history of it kind of blows me away to an extent, really, because that's before my time.
Yeah.
So my experience in terms of, you know, that terminology is strictly just school, coming up in school, that sort of tribalism, and, you know, those really intense, you know, matches with Chelsea when we was in, you know, the Champions League, Mourinho's agent. It was just a thing that was said, and I think because Chelsea's rise at the time kind of combined with new money, because I was still only in like year 10 or maybe, well, 9 or 10, yeah, it was more, we thought it was about I personally thought it was about the money thing. I would have never understood.
So did I,
as a kid.
I said that, even that was 2014.
As a kid, I would have never ever drew those comparisons. I didn't know what a rent boy was, if I'm completely honest with you, do you know what I mean? It's only as I've gotten older now, and you kind of become more aware, you get a little bit more knowledge, you have more life experiences, that's probably been not necessarily explained so kind of on the nose, but you understand what it means and the undertones to it. So I think from my own experience as well, that history, no one's ever give us that breakdown. So I think especially from a younger demographic, hearing that and understanding that those is of where the roots have come from probably helps kind of give it a little bit more context, because a lot of people, and not necessarily myself, but I can imagine there have been people that the first thing when you say you've done something wrong is to get defensive and put your guard up and be like, what is it that I've done wrong? And it's happened with, racism, when people say something that is clearly racist or clearly offensive. They don't understand that they've stepped over the mark, and the first thing they do is get more defensive and get the backups and start to kind of double down on whatever it is that they've said, without being, big enough, like you've said yourself, Chris, to just listen. First and foremost, listen to why it's hurt somebody, listen to the reason why it's been hurtful, and then go from there and process. So the fact that you've said that has made me kind of look inwards now and think, do you know what? I know for 100% fact that my language at times has definitely not been okay, whether that's been on camera or off camera, just in passing and casually. So, I do not play any sort of part in terms of the scale that Chris and Paul play on this channel. These are the pioneers in that respect, but them getting me in to do whatever I do, I try to do as much to keep the reputation of the channel intact and obviously try and speak my personal opinion, but those are the type of opinions that I shouldn't be bringing forward or putting onto this channel in any way, shape or form. So for whatever part that I've played in damaging that kind of reputation as well, I definitely hold my hands up, and I'd be first to apologise for that. So,
and the important thing is you're learning, we're all learning, and you take on board what's said, you take it forward, and your production team need to also be really aware and listen in for stuff that can be said without intent, that could be hurtful, could be harmful. 99% of the stuff that you guys put out is brilliant, it's class, and so it should be. You work hard at it, but it can always be better. It can always be better.
yeah.
I think what's also interesting is this sort of viewpoint of, well, what about this and what about that, and Paul, what about it?
Those other chants are vile. I'm a Liverpool fan. I saw Hillsborough unfold on the television. I knew from that moment what I saw, and it didn't reflect what was in the papers the next day. It didn't reflect what people chant at us sometimes. It sickens me, that stuff. We campaign against it as Kop Outs as much as any other fan. But what we're looking at right here and now is something else. Another chant that isn't offence brought to us by other fans. It's offence brought to us by our own fans. And we're bigger than that.
Yeah, get your own house in order before you start talking to anybody else.
People in glass houses and all that stuff. Yeah.
And it's right, isn't it? I mean, you mentioned Hillsborough there, Paul, and that's right. And, we've seen so many things that have been falsely accused of Liverpool fans over the years. And we get it every week about getting a job and stuff like that. And I've got a job and it annoys me. Yeah, it would annoy me even more if I didn't have a job, but it's just not true either.
And sadly, who can afford a match ticket if they haven't got a job? It's a nonsense chant, and worse still, it's coming sometimes from places with worse unemployment records than we have.
I think that's the historical nature of it all as well, though, because I think when you look at, like, as I say, with the origins of where that chant comes from, and then you're looking at the Hills, where all these stuff come from a time before a lot of young fans have been getting into the grounds now, and it's something that people grow up with without having the full knowledge of the history and why they say it, so they don't actually think and deep it and process it in the same way at all. Doesn't make it right in any way, shape or form, but I'd find stuff like this more, you get more from it because you're getting that information, whereas before all you're getting is the guy next to you and the people in the rows in front of you, they're chanting something, they're getting something going, and then you're just following suit. Whereas at least when you have these type of adult conversations, almost, you're kind of unpacking each thing, you're kind of demystifying it, and all of a sudden the next time it's said, you've got the opportunity to now think, I know better.
Do you know what really annoys me, actually, and it's not that you got to sit down with Jurgen Klopp.
That's annoying me. Not gonna lie.
We used to self-police ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the fact that the Liverpool manager has stepped in to exert influence shouldn't be a position that we as a fan base need. That shouldn't happen. When I was growing up, and if I'd said something at the match with my dad, he'd elbow me and tell me shut the fuck up, quite frankly. And I was ready this weekend at Chelsea to self-police. Now, where I was in the main stand, and I've heard reports of chanting still going on even after your chat with Jürgen, I didn't hear anything, and I can honestly tell you that. But I know that a lot of people did, so it did happen even after Jürgen. But we should be self-policing. We should be able to stand up to our fellow fans and supporters and say, that's not right.
And although there was some chanting, there was an awful lot more self-policing going on. There was a lot of people who stood up and were counted, who chanted louder, positive chants, who told people to shut up, both inside the ground, in the concourses, in the stands and outside. And it's brilliant that self-policing is happening. But like you say, one bit of self-policing should be enough. And unfortunately at the minute, there are some people who see that they've got some sort of God-given right to be hateful. I just don't get it. I didn't feel that was ever part of Liverpool fandom.
And that's it. I think it's also important probably today to talk about what's going on in the city, because it's not just football, and football stuff spills over because it exists in your life. So what's happening in Liverpool now?
Can I ask you another question on top of that as well? What Chris is saying, being obviously of black heritage, have you found that as a challenging or a more of a barrier as well, trying to break through to some people of like Jamaican descent and Afro-Caribbean descent? And I think hopefully you know what I mean when I'm saying it, asking you this question, because from as I say, my family are Jamaican. It's not a secret that there is those stigmas and stereotypes from,
I mean, my dad's from Trinidad.
Okay.
Trinidad's a country I can't legally go and visit. I can legally go to Jamaica and probably face more societal pressure there than I would in Trinidad.
Yeah, absolutely.
But legally, I can't even go to Trinidad.
Yeah.
So the issues within black communities are actually, really weird that they are.
It's a weird dynamic. It's a weird
dynamic,
isn't it? Yeah.
Because they're magnifying British colonial attitudes.
Yeah.
It's not from black origin, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
And the issues within our communities are also based in ignorance.
Yeah.
They're based
100%.
in lack of knowledge and understanding. And, when we look at black history, actually, there have been many, many kings and noble people from Africa who were on the LGBT plus spectrum, in one form or another. So when you get the education right, you can actually dispel some of the attitudes and issues that are there. But no, not always an easy ride, not always an easy conversation.
I can imagine.
I've got family members who, me, my husband and I, we do not necessarily seek to engage with because it's just not worth the hassle.
Yeah. Which is sad, really, as well. You know what I mean? But I get that.
And then when you look at what's happening in Liverpool right now, in the last 6 months, pretty much every month, an LGBT plus person has been beaten up on the streets of our city, been left bleeding, bruised and battered. We've had racist attacks similarly as well. And, I don't want to see another one. But also language has a direct association with the violence. Something verbal leads to violence nearly every single time. It starts with one word and it ends with violence. And I don't want our football to be part of leading down that road for any of us. It's just hideous. I don't want to see another photograph of some young LGBT plus person, and it very often is a young person, left for dead on our streets. We've had Michael Causer killed, we've had Anthony Walker killed, and the last words that they heard were words of hate.
And just to be clear on this, the Crown Prosecution Service say that Rent Boys is a hate crime. Do they not?
They do.
And there in and of itself is an education point for everybody. Whether you believe it to be one, when I've spoken to loads of people and they speak to me actually on this more often than not because I don't engage the conversation, who say, I don't mean it like that. I didn't mean it like that, but I've stopped saying it because now I realise it's a hate crime.
Yeah.
You know, and this is something, and that I think, I hope anyway, that we're all grown up enough to realise that why would you say it if it offends people anyway, if you know it offends people, and if it's pretty much against the law, you wouldn't do it. So you wouldn't, a lot of people don't break laws, so why would you break this one for a laugh? It's not a laugh for the people that it hurts, clearly. It's not a laugh for anybody, is it? And you know, there are so many hate crimes and words that are hate crimes that you just wouldn't do. Why is this one that we're talking about today any different from any of the others? It's kind of baffling to me, and it's an unwanted chant. I think we've delved into the history of the chant. We've delved into what it means to somebody. But yeah, so from me, Paul, again, you know, for being the poster child of this, I'm so sorry.
Look, we move forward. You know, every family has somebody that hacks you off now and again.
My brother's an Everton fan, I know all about this.
You know, you still get back together at the end of it and you move forward because we're big enough to do that.
No, I'm the same as Chris really in that respect, and as I say, I'm glad that we've had the opportunity to kind of sit down and clear the air in some ways, but I do humbly apologise for that as well.
No worries, no worries.